baseball game at least once, and I've heard talk about how players are able to be traded or negotiate for their salary. Well, to make it a little bit more relatable to you, imagine that you have a job and it has a base salary, and you get an offer for another job which has a higher salary and more benefits. You have the choice to pick between which job you want to take. Well, before free agencies, players weren't allowed to choose. For the rest of the speech, I'm going to continue to inform you about free agency through research I've done and the effects that it has had on Major League Baseball. And I'm going to use the example of the Cincinnati Reds' Big Red Machine because before free agency, they were a huge power, and after free agency, it ended their reign and the hopes for a team like it. The Cincinnati Reds was from 1970 to 1976, and it was full of big-name players according to the book Cincinnati and the Big Red Machine. The big players were known as the Great Eight, and it consisted of Johnny Bench, Pete Rose, Joe Morgan, Tony Perez, Dave Concepcion, George Foster, Ken Griffey, and Cesar Geronimo. With these players, they won many individual and team awards. Some of the individual awards, according to Baseball Cards and the Cincinnati Reds, was the most valuable player. Johnny Bench won this back-to-back, and then Pete Rose and Joe Morgan also won it twice. During Morgan's reign as MVP, during his second time, his teammate Pat Zachary won Co-Rookie of the Year. With all these individual successes, the team was also extremely successful. They won the World Series back-to-back in 1975 and 1976, and they also won 4 divisional titles when they were together for only 6 years. Now that I've explained some of the successes of the team, I'm now going to explain how free agency ended their reign and the hopes for a team like them. Before free agency, there was the reserve clause, and the reserve clause stated that if you played for a team one year, you had to play for them the next. So the only person able to negotiate a player's salary or who they played for was the team itself. The player had no say. This is why many players during this time were on one team their whole career. And Curt Flood, who was a player for the Cardinals in 1956 to 1971, wanted to challenge a trade his team made for him, according to Alan Barra, who wrote How Curt Flood Changed Baseball and Killed His Career in the Process. And to challenge the trade, he wanted to sue the Major League Baseball. And with the help of Marvin Miller, who was his lawyer, he unfortunately did not succeed in his lawsuit, but he did set the path for free agency. And Marvin Miller became the director of the Players Association and continued to fight for players' right to negotiation. In December 1975, 2 pitchers decided to play without contract, and it became known as the start of free agency. With free agency, players were now able to negotiate salaries, so their salaries increased according to Economics of Major League Baseball by Michael Harper, and he stated that free agency is the state of an athlete to negotiate their contract and what team they play for, and it ended the reign of the reserve clause. So salaries skyrocketed from about $45,000 in 1975 to $289,000 in 1983. And now that I've explained what free agency is, I'm now going to explain to you the effects that it had on all franchises, including the Big Red Machine. Now that it changed the consistency of what teams were made up of. They used to be made up of big-name players all on one team. Now, because of budget reasons, teams weren't able to afford them, so players became dispersed throughout many teams. And this allowed for the Big Red Machine to end. According to a Reds article, What If Tony Perez Was Not Traded? There was one main trade that ended their reign, and this was the trade of Tony Perez. Even though he wasn't an individual that was accoladed, he was one that was the glue that held the team together. And with his trade, it marked the end of free agency. Free agency also made the league more competitive. According to Jason Stark from ESPN, he wrote, "Free agency increases competitive balance." He stated that in a 25-year period ending in 1975, only 10 different teams won the World Series. In a 25-year period after, 15 different teams won it, and also only 14 different teams played in the World Series, and after, 19 different teams. In conclusion, free agency has allowed for a more competitive team due to the spread of players throughout many different teams rather than composed just on one. And it also ended the reign of teams like the Big Red Machine and a hope for a team in the future like this kind of team. Thank you.
All right, imagine living in this house. So I think we can all agree this is a pretty attractive house. But would you believe me if I said that this house is 100% self-sustainable, therefore this type of house is one of the most environmentally friendly houses ever built? And I learned about these houses, which are called earthships, when my family friend, Scott Irick, returned from a summer in New Mexico building these. And ever since then, I have been intrigued with them. And they're interesting because not only are they very attractive, but they solve three important problems that our world is having right now, which are we are running out of energy, we're running out of water, and we have too much garbage. So first, we can talk about how the Earthship helps save energy. And so to give you an idea, the U.S. Energy Information Association says that the average Kentuckian spends about $108 a month on utilities. And according to my interview with Scott Irick, the average Earthship owner spends about $100 a year. So this is possible because Earthships operate off the grid, which means that they don't rely on public utilities for their water and electricity. And instead of that, they run on solar and wind power. And this works because every Earthship has a solar panel and a wind module on the roof. And how this works is that the energy is absorbed from the solar panel and the wind module. And from there, it becomes DC currents, which are just like the same thing in any traditional house that creates electricity. And from there, it goes to this device called a POM, which is short for Power Organizing Module. And that is where everything gets its electricity from, like TVs or computers or anything that requires electricity. And this chart from envimpact.org, which is a website that calculates composite environmental impact indexes, which basically just says the impact that certain things are having on the environment, shows the difference between how much impact coal makes compared to solar and wind power. And the numbers are coal's index is 885.48, while solar is 5238.38, and wind is 8.55. So overall, you can have basically the same electronics as you can in a traditional house. It just makes a lot less of an impact on the environment. But energy isn't all that's hurting the environment these days. The USGS Water School says that between showering, drinking, and washing clothes, and other things that you use water for, the average American uses about 400 gallons of water a day. And according to waterindustry.org, each person needs about 265,000 gallons of water just to support like basic human functions. And in 1995, 166 million people in 18 different countries were living below that. And it's projected that in 2050, that those numbers will be 1.7 billion and 39 different countries. So with statistics like that, can we really afford to be wasting any water? So this is how Earthship helps you save water. And the Earthship actually allows you to use the same water about 3 times before it starts the cycle over. And it does this it starts here with a cistern that's on top of every Earthship roof. And this catches any snow or rain, pretty much any precipitation. And from there, it goes into the shower after it's filtered, so it's just as clean as any water, like filtered water you would drink. And once it drains through the shower, it goes into the greenhouse. And after the plants use it, it goes back to the bathroom, and you use it for it's used to flush the toilet. And after that, it goes into an internal sewage system where it's filtered, and the whole cycle begins again. So to review, clean water is not renewable, and we are running out, and the Earthship helps conserve that. But water is not the only thing being reused in the Earthship, because Earthships are made of 100% recycled material, which used to be garbage, and most of those are tires. And 800 million is the number of cars that are on the road right now, and if you multiply that by how many tires they have, which is obviously 4, then it is 3.2 billion tires that are all someday going to be thrown into a landfill. And those are filling our landfills, and that's causing a problem. But Earthships answer that. They solve that problem because these billions of tires that are sitting in landfills hold a lot of potential energy. So what the people who build Earthships do are they fill these tires with so much dirt, they pack them so tightly that they are about 400 pounds by the time they're done, and then they are used for insulation in the foundation in the housing. And what this does, this also acts as a heating and air conditioning because there is no heating and air conditioning in Earthships, but what happens is every house is oriented to face the south, so it gets the most sun possible, and so all day long it's absorbing the energy and it's packed so densely that it's creating thermal mass. And so in the daytime it's like collecting the heat, and then in the nighttime when the sun is gone and it should get colder in the house, it releases the heat into the house. And so even though there's no air conditioning or heating, it remains a comfortable 70 degrees almost constantly. So in conclusion, while you may expect a house that is this environmentally friendly to be kind of unattractive, it's not. And it also helps conserve energy and conserve water, and it is also built with recycled materials.